Welcome, everyone. Not exactly a fun and exciting topic today, but I think a very important one. As we all know, yesterday marked the 1 year anniversary of the horrific events that unfolded on October 7th, 2023. So today we're just gonna, I think Shmuel and Sandra and I, we're just gonna have a conversation. Hopefully you guys will jump in as well, remembering those that we've lost and looking forward, just, what's the current situation today and what does the future hold? Where do we go from here?
Thank you, Kim. Um, to start off with what you said, what the future holds. Um, to start to say that the 7th of October, more than anything, in my opinion, really took us as a surprise, as a shock, as the understanding that whenever you think that you know what the future holds, and when you think the control is everything is under control, then it surprises you. I think Israel woke up the 7th of October to realization that everything changed for us. Everything that we thought was the reality and how we hold and control the Hamas and all, the perceiving future, it all changed in one single day where really, like the times of Jericho, the walls came down and the border that we thought was the highest, most protected border in the world, $3.5 billion investment in this obstacle, and fell down. And we saw from Gaza an attack like we could not imagine. So today is going to be dedicated to talk about the 7th of October with all the components about it, where it started, the war in Gaza, and the development and how we felt in Judea and Samaria, how it unfolded in Lebanon, the missiles attack from Iran lately, and the situation altogether in the Israel society and what people are going through. And today, for that, we are hosting Sandra, and it's great to see you, Sandra. Shalom.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
And just to start off, we want to screen a short video. We thought that we don't need to remember yet again what happened because we live it every day. But just for the people who, maybe just don't remember the moment of the 7th of October, we want to screen this short video to remember what happened that day and what really changed everything. While Kim is searching for the link, I want to just remind you the numbers. It's hard to believe, but these are the numbers. In the attack of the 7th of October, since the 7th of October, 16,091 people were murdered. We have it here. We talk after the clip.
هاتوا كمان هاتوا الله اكبر מישהו שיכול לתת לנו סימן חיים
I will love you and I will miss you every single day for the rest of my life.
It's day 185.
We're gonna mark the 6 months.
Tamar is more than 250 days in the captivity.
Romy, you're strong.
And what started with an awful day of attack and continued really to a full-on war is something that we want to talk about today. And I want to go back to the beginning. Sandra, we probably talked about it in the past, but I want to maybe, thinking back a year, what do you remember from that day?
Well, you know what? I'm going to push forward for a minute just to reflect back. The attack happened on a holiday, on Simchat Torah. It's a day that it's a very joyous day. We're in the synagogue, we're dancing, we're singing, we're celebrating the completion of the annual cycle of reading the Torah. And right now, in our communities all over Israel, we are struggling with the question, how do we celebrate Simchat Torah this coming year? And I'm very involved in my own synagogue, and there was we have a discussion going on through WhatsApp on this issue, and people are expressing their opinions. And one fellow said something that struck me so deeply. He said, last year on Simchat Torah, we continued dancing and singing and celebrating because we really had no idea what was going on. And when I look back, we knew nothing. I came in to the synagogue at 9:00 in the morning, and a friend of mine said she heard a rumor that there was a terrorist driving around Sderot in a van, and they were looking for him. Okay, this is what I knew at 9 in the morning, because we were in a place that had no sirens. Somebody in synagogue got up around that same time and said, there is something going on in the south. There's missiles, there's war. They may even be a few casualties. Be aware in case something happens in our neighborhood, and then they told us where the shelters are. And we really didn't know much. At some time, a couple hours later, they got up and said, okay, everybody go home. But they didn't tell us why. No one really knew. And because we are Sabbath observers, we did not turn on the TV or the radio. And my husband and I, our children were not home with us. They were in their own homes. We are not of military age in any way. So there was no reason for us to turn on the news. We weren't needed. Of course, by the end of the day, in the late afternoon, we went outside and we found out that a friend of mine said he had heard from someone who had seen the news that nine Israeli communities in the Negev were captured by Hamas. And at that point, I remember thinking, this is not possible. It is just not possible. And yesterday, as part of what was going on all day long, and it's continuing today, reviewing what happened, one of the TV channels put on, kind of in a short form, they did key moments from that day, from 6:30 in the morning on until midnight or something. And I felt that for the first time, I was able to see blow by blow what happened that day and how there was so much chaos. I mean, we knew it, we were reported, but to actually experience how much chaos the people were watching TV, and as we were watching this, we keep saying to ourselves, how could this have happened? And as some of the reports have come out over the year, not detailed, but here and there, they've done some investigation. The more we learn, the more we question, how could this have happened?
Unfortunately, until this moment, this question is not answered. We are still in a situation, and I really I'm connecting to what you said. Thinking about the Zoom today, before, I interview somebody, but not a friend like Sandra, but when I interview somebody, I think about questions. And I knew that coming today, there are so many things that we need to reflect on. But the interesting fact is that for some reason, it's almost the 7th of October erased all the memory before it. Like everything that I can remember in our lifetime is after the 7th of October. This something changed in our lives, which is so big that it looks like everything before that is like almost a dream. And I'll tell you something crazy. The 8th of October was a Sunday, and it's funny. We release a weekly portion of the week, right? Shabbat Shalom. And we explain about the portion of the week. And it was October, right? It was like a month after I took over the position of director, and I decided to do something different. That I'm not going to record it on my computer, that I'm going to book like a studio. And it was scheduled. So in the morning of the 8th, we're still shocked. The guy texted me, "You booked the studio, it's yours, you're paying anyway." So I'm driving to the studio. It's here in Kfar Saba, not far from here. And I need to record now the weekly portion. So it took an hour, and maybe I will record 4 weekly portions ideas. And I remember thinking to myself this, because it's going to be aired in a week and in 2 weeks and in 3 weeks and in 4 weeks, how relevant would it be to speak about the war? In our minds, like the 8th of October for me, I still didn't realize, what is it? Was it like a major attack like happened in the past? Will it be an operation that's going to take more than 2 weeks? We couldn't understand. And I'm talking about the day after. The sheer mass numbers were so shocking that you go back to the first Bereshit video I do, and I talk about the war and maybe Noach, and then I just leave it because I really didn't know how could it be, like, where are we gonna go? And I want to go back to the day of the 7th of October, and I can tell you that I had, and I shared it many times, I had the most the horrible experience, because every Saturday, every Shabbat, I have a chavruta. I learn with a friend between 7:30 and 8:30 before the morning prayer, and it was the same on that Shabbat. And I went and I've learned with my friend Elad, and I probably shared the story, but a couple of hours later, my wife comes to me and says, "Go visit your friend at his home because his daughter was in the Nova party." And I go to his home. It's like 1 or 2 in the afternoon already, and they're like over the phone. They got a text message from her at 9 o'clock in the morning. She went to the party, and she didn't came back. They found her body a week later. And when did they reveal that? A week after we're searching for her. And I remind you that it took days to recognize some of the bodies. Some of them weren't sure if they're dead or they're kidnapped to Gaza. And after a week of praying and of searching, I'm going to his place on the next Saturday, again, 7:30 in the morning, and I enter the home, and he says to me, 2 hours before that, they left the army, and the psychologist who told him that his daughter was murdered. And now I sit with him for an hour, and then I need to go to the morning prayer. And I'm acting as tough as I can to to show that everything is normal. It's a small community. They know we're good friends. Everybody's looking for Avia. Everybody's scared. Everybody knows that something horrible happened to her. Either she's kidnapped or she's dead. And I go to synagogue, and I'm trying to act like everything is normal, but of course I can't. And people went to their home and shared the news. And from that moment, the first month was me, going with my friends to the funeral and to the Shiva and to this stages of I don't know how to say it, but deep pain. And this week, a couple of hours before Rosh Hashanah, we went again to the cemetery for the full 1 year ceremony, and we cannot believe what a year what a year. So my next stage is what do you do, Sandra? So everybody is around you, everybody is acting, everybody wants to do something. What do people do when they're not in military? when they are civilians? What did you see that people did? How Israel acted, the civilians, I want to say.
Well, when we talked about how October 7th, for everyone, we each told our personal stories of where we were and what we knew and didn't know. And of course, that shock and lack of understanding, even of the most minimal, until information was available as to really what happened, it took days, over days. We were glued to the television. That same chaos that we experienced in trying to get information was a chaos that was also at the highest levels of the army and the highest levels of the government. And so, like you talked, Shmuel, about you and your friend going to find a body. And this is unbelievable. I mean, we know the way these people were murdered, and the terrible way those bodies were left. In many cases, they could not recognize the bodies, and some took months. Actually, the final ones were identified months. So we are used to the fact that we have systems in place. There is systems where there are laboratories, there are places, but it turns out 1,165 people were murdered on that one day. So many people, the systems break down. And so you had people going to morgues, going to places, looking. I just heard a story of somebody who literally had to open body bags to see if they could find their child. That's how crazy it was. The same craziness affected, it was very clear that all the survivors in those communities had to leave immediately. They on that first day, for days, there were still terrorists in the area. They had to leave. Where are they going to go? The government was not able to function. And this is where we saw the civilians of Israel, the people of Israel, step in, where the government was in total chaos. The people came in. The hotels said, come. Well, we'll figure out who'll pay for this later. There were people, I remember a story of a woman in Sderot, an elderly woman, and she wanted to get to her daughter-in-law. And she's in a war zone. Nobody can get there. And she doesn't drive, and she doesn't know how to get there. Well, they set up a whole system of volunteers that you called somebody and say, I need a ride to get from Sderot to Netanya, right? And someone came and picked her up. Food. They drafted 350,000 men and women on one day, but they didn't have enough food. I mean, you can't go from 0 to 350,000 on one day and have enough food. So you had people going out, setting up barbecues, making sandwiches, people who had stores, fruits and vegetables and whatever. There was such an amazing outpouring of volunteerism. And I have to say, not just volunteerism, but for those first few weeks, the civilians were much more organized and much more effective than any official government or military organization. Things got back to order. The government did step in. The people were taken care of. But what we saw was that volunteerism continued. Amongst my friends, I just speak with my own personal friends that I can speak to. I have a number of friends that continue, even today, to go once a week to help farmers who are shorthanded, pick vegetables, fruit, whatever their produce is for that week, to pick, to pack, whatever is needed. I have another friends who go on a regular basis to visit the wounded soldiers who are in the rehabilitation wing in Sheba Hospital, which is the largest rehabilitation wing in the country. It's an amazing center. And they go and visit at least once a week just to bring cheer and sit and listen. There is a record number of men, particularly, who have had limbs amputated, who have lost limbs in this war. And this, and then on the most simple level, less now, although now people are starting to be drafted again. But when we had the maximum draft going on until about March, I had a lot of friends who were going to their children their daughters or their daughters-in-law and helping them with their small children because the husbands were drafted. And these are the kinds of things. I mean, now already, I have two sons who are expecting to be drafted any day. They have not yet been drafted, but they're expecting to be drafted. So
Wait,
my daughter,
but
yeah,
make it clear for the third or the fourth time.
right, third time, right. And they are, so my daughter-in-law, who now she was pregnant, the second time he was drafted, he was nearby. Now my son David is expected to be drafted to the north and put back in tanks. That's a whole, anyway. Well, my daughter-in-law was pregnant. Now she has a little baby. So they were with us for the holiday, and my daughter-in-law says, okay, when are you moving in? You know, so I said, moving in, I don't know, but I will definitely come for days at a time for as long as you need me. And so I'm gearing up for that. That's my little piece, you know, that I can do. And that's just, you know, just a taste of what's been going on.
I think you said it correctly that the government. Okay, let's you know, look at it this way. One of the fundamental reasons the state of Israel was established is to protect their people. Every country, that's the right of the country to protect its people. On the 7th of October, we had no protection. The feeling was that we are an isolated village in the middle of Poland, and the Cossack came and, you know, did this thing and raped the women and killed the men and just left, and you had nothing to do but to be sad and pray a bit. That was the feeling. On the 7th of October, the feeling was that there was nobody around. Of course, after that, we will hear about a lot of heroic attempts, and we will hear about troops and about hundreds of soldiers that went in to try to stop it without the proper gear and preparation. The understanding was that, you know, we are fighting against a bunch of people with like flip-flops and a weapon in the beginning. But as elite units entered those villages, they found hundreds of armed, prepared, and geared Nukhba fighters to fight. And we had a lot of you know, brave soldiers dying that day in the attempt of stopping it. The feeling, though, I'm talking about the feeling was that the army wasn't there and nobody stopped them. And then we're going to hear about stories which I think, you know, personally blew my mind about people that hear about this attack. And what do? They live far away. They go into the car and they drive down south. And we heard of stories that people came from. The famous one, of course, is the Kalmanzon that came from Othniel. And we have the Slutki that came from Jerusalem, the two brothers. And when Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, was in the Senate, I think, and he shares the story about these Ethiopian soldiers that ran miles and miles to go and fight. So we're going to hear about it. But the statement that the government wasn't there came back with the understanding that we lost the government and the army wasn't there, but we revealed the people of Israel. The civilians of Israel woke up to that day in the understanding we need to do something, and everybody woke up. And on that morning, the 8th, from that, you know, the attempts and just the hundreds and thousands of different ways that people were needed. Sandra, you mentioned many of them, but it was unbelievable. And I want to share just one simple moment that I personally had. So I'm privileged. I always say that, you know, we are privileged, all of us working in CFOIC. So our work is in the business of doing good. We have friends from around the world that help us help our people. Okay, that's our job. Let's put it this way. And we were in a position that day that all the communities around us, and that's something that we always need to tap in on and remember. The feeling was that we are going next. The real sense of a feeling that people have, and right now, you know, we know it, that there were plans in place by Nasrallah in Lebanon they worked on it. with Iran, that it should have been an orchestrated event. They come from the south, they come from the north, and they conquer Israel. This was something that was supposed to go down, and thank God it didn't happen. It didn't happen, but the plan was there. Now, look at what we had in mind. If they were able to penetrate the 3.5 billion obstacle, what stops them here? And now I'm going to show you this. These lights are Arab villages. What stops our neighbors? Literally nothing, to enter our communities. And the feeling was that Judea and Samaria, the same is going to happen any minute now. So we got phone calls and we got requests and security and security and security, and we did a lot to help. But I want to take one different moment, and that's connected to what Sandra just mentioned. It took us, I think it was around Pesach, so it's April, to understand that there were families that didn't see their father for 2 months and 3 months straight. People went to the army on the 7th of October and didn't came back. It took a lot of time till they were able to organize a routine of people going in, going out. So we thought, how can we help them? And we started this campaign called the Shabbat Box. You probably remember when we asked people to donate the needs for Shabbat. I'll be honest. I thought it's nice. It's a nice gesture. But there we can bring a camera, we can help defend the community. But when I went to those communities and I was there when we gave the actual Shabbat boxes, I'm telling you, the mothers and the ladies were in tears. Really, like I've never seen before, because it's been such a crazy time. And we were dealing with important things of security there and there and there and there. And we forgot, in a way, to hug the real heroes that stayed home and were there with the families, with the kids. And you mentioned the barbecues and so what happened was every person, went to an army base and opened those massive barbecue parties for the soldiers. And one of the ladies came to me and says to me, I'm like from October, it's April now, nobody came here to do any barbecue party. It's only the men, it's only the soldiers. What about the families? And I remember that moment as a significant moment that I understood there's so much need. There's so much things happening here. How are we going to orchestrate and protect all of it? So my next thought is this. So how is a mother, and you just finished up talking about it, how is a mother continuing with regular life when our kids are drafted? Or the real question is, how was regular life in Israel since October 7th? How would you describe it?
Well, there's different age groups. I'm a mother of reserve soldiers. I'm a grandmother. So my sons who are in the army themselves have wives and children. And so in many ways, I'm a backstage kind of person. And I have to say, what I discovered in my daughters-in-law, they're amazing. Okay. They were so, I guess the word is tough, but they don't come across as tough. They come across as ordinary women. Thank God we have in place a wonderful educational system. We have daycare, we have preschools, we have schools. And that made it much easier for the women to continue working, at least, during the hours that the kids were in the regular format, the regular frameworks. But what is amazing to me is that it was the women carrying the whole burden. In other words, usually, at least that's how it is here in Israel, the father and the mother share in these responsibilities. In the morning, they get the kids out together, then they both go to work. In the afternoon, usually the parents take turns. One day the mother comes home early from work, another day the father comes home early from work, and they share what we call the witching hour, the bedtime, the bath time, all that. for women to do this with young children day in and day out for months. I remember when I was a young woman, didn't have this kind of a war situation, but just when I was home, let's say on maternity leave or something for months at a time, and I was doing this more than I usually was because I was home. So I would start throwing things. And these women were just, amazing. The patience, the understanding that they were full partners in this fight, in this war. And that in order for their husbands to do the job they had to do, they needed to be strong. They needed to, even when their husbands called, women didn't complain to their husbands because they didn't want to weaken the morale of their husbands. No, a husband is not going to be a good soldier if he's worried about his wife who's having a breakdown. And you just saw in these young women something so special. Women my age, as I said, some of them were helping out the younger generation, some more, some less, and also worrying more, okay? Because when your son is in danger, I don't know, there's a lot of, every man at war have a lot of loved ones. They have children, they have wives, they have siblings, they have parents. That's nothing like the mother. The mother is going to worry about her son more than anyone else. And that's a challenge. That's a real challenge. I have to say that I'm a bit of a pie in the sky kind of person. And I always feel like I don't have to worry unless there's something to worry about. It's not going to happen to me. And the intensity of events of up until March was so intense that I don't think I had time or energy to worry other than general worry, and then my nephew was killed in January. And even then, the intensity of the events, you didn't have time to think or feel, not really intensely. And now my kids have been out of the Army for a while. And so we feel kind of normal. And now that they're going to go in, now I'm starting to worry in a way that I never did, because I keep thinking, my nephew fell. It can happen. It can happen to us. It can come close to home. And well, they haven't been called up yet, but I'm worried. I'm worried because it's going to happen. But
I have a question for you guys. It's kind of a twofold question that I'd like you to address. Number one, like, how many families in Israel have like 1 degree of separation, meaning like they have lost, they've been to a personal funeral, not just a friend, not just, a distant whatever, but someone like an immediate, close family member. Do you think there is any family in Israel that has been unaffected, or has every single family been affected? And then
every family.
what's that? Every family, right? I think that we as Americans, I know for sure, can't even grasp that. I mean, the only thing that comes even remotely close is September 11th, 2001. And while it was horrific, it didn't affect every single family in America. It
It
just
didn't even
didn't.
affect every single family in New York.
Correct. It didn't. Yeah. Whereas when I think about it,
I think if we do, that's a wonderful comparison. September 11th. September 11th, there were about 2,700 people killed in one day.
right.
Okay. There are 8 million people in the greater New York area.
Wow.
Okay. So
Wow.
the number of people in the greater New York area is equivalent to the number of people in the entire state of Israel. And
everybody's related.
And then one day we had almost 1,200 people. And now, Shmuel, you said it was about 1,900 people, okay, that have been killed in an equivalent, okay? But the difference between New York and Israel, and I lived in both places, in New York, you don't know your neighbors.
Right.
You don't.
Right.
People tend to have small families, and you don't know your neighbors.
I just want to say the numbers correctly, that Prime Minister Netanyahu said it. The equivalent of an attack like that to the numbers per capita is if 9/11, God forbid, was 40,000 people. This is the ratio per capita of the people we lost with number.
But the difference is also when you say 1 degree of separation, if my neighbor's son fell, that's it's not like a brother, but it is
Right.
not like just someone you know. Okay.
Right.
The whole community is like a family. And that's particularly true in the communities in Judea and Samaria where we're smaller, but also in other small communities all over Israel. But also, I can't describe it. We are all related. I mean, literally, you know, you have, and you saw that, Kim. Even I remember that when your first trips to Israel, when everything you needed, remember you needed something with the post office, you needed a dentist, you know, every single thing she needed. I knew someone personally who could take care of it for her, or it was that person's brother. And I remember you being so shocked. Well, this is what Israel is.
And then the second part of my question is, you know, leading up to, and I think that's, you know, as we look back and as it unfolds, I think in years and years to come, what we remember about Israel pre-October 7th was the chaos that Israel was in. I mean, what, 5 elections in 4 years or something, and the disunity. Can you guys address like how that has changed, or what is the feeling on that front in Israel post October 7th? And then kind of another half of a question here. Would you guys say that there is any aspect of life, any, that has been unaffected, you know, that is exactly the same as it was pre-October 7th? You know, and I'm just thinking, you know, like we wanted to bring a tour and we weren't able to like right away at the time. We ended up bringing a tour and we've got a tour coming. We're going to talk about that later. But the hotels didn't have workers. I mean, you know, like there were complete industries that didn't have employees. You know, and that's something, again, as Americans, we just can't even comprehend like what that did to the country or how you operated.
I think the biggest difference to understand is that the day after the 7th of October, only look at the numbers, okay? 350,000 Israeli were drafted, okay?
Right.
So you take them and you take all their families, right? They're impacted. More than 150,000 people were evacuated from the south and from the north. Take their immediate family as well. So just from the economy side, okay, let's talk for a second and understand what it means. It means that all the workers that worked in the industries that Palestinians work in, right? Our neighbors couldn't allow them to go and work again because of the terror situation. All the young people's jobs, they weren't relevant because they were back in the army, right? The hotels and all the industry of entertainment wasn't relevant because our hotels were full capacity with people that had to leave their home, evacuate their home. People are still living in hotels. I want to repeat that. People are still living in hotels a year after. You know what it means to live in a hotel room? You went to hotels in your lifetime. The rooms are not bigger than what you stayed in. And we're talking about families that need to stay in those rooms. This is unreal. The questions of unity. It's a question that I can, you know, split it into two. When there's a fire in the forest, all the animals run together and find refuge, right? Just after the 7th of October, we saw the unity once again, and people went together. We were fighting together in all the aspects. Of course, the understanding as we are fighting together on the same troops in the same army. We had to remember we're not against one another because you saw a demonstration before that and you saw people demonstrating against what you demonstrated, but then you stayed in the same tent, in the same tank, in the borders or inside Gaza. Now you're going to fight about decisions that your prime minister did. We really talked about life here, and people were fighting for their life and for the life of the nation. And therefore, the unity aspect was completely there connected. Of course, there's always in Israel, even during the war, there's always the political issue with our prime minister. Dear Benjamin Netanyahu, 20 years is the prime minister. For 20 years, is under control. And now the blame games start. After such a huge attack, one would ask himself, who is going to take responsibility? Who is going to be in charge of changing the commanders? Who is going to be in charge of changing the government and the laws and the rules and the protection? And I think this is where you hear shooting behind me. I hope it's good. And I think this is where question we're beginning to ask again. At the next stage, when you're looking at the future and you're looking for who is going to lead Israel, who is going to take responsibility, who is going to change what needs to be changed in the atmosphere in Israel, I think this is where conflicts in the Israeli society can arise again. But I'm sure Sandra has something to share. And Sandra, do talk about yesterday's event. I think it's an interesting topic.
The two events?
Yes, just as an example.
Okay, well, okay. I think that I think what you said, Shmuel, about we're all fighting together and the men are fighting together in the same tent, in the same tank. And that is a message that these soldiers are coming back from Gaza or from wherever they are with a very strong message. You guys, get your act together. You have to stop fighting with one another. If we are together in this army, we can, and a lot of these young soldiers are seeing themselves as a model about how that doesn't erase the conflict. I can tell you that, for example, at when my nephew was killed, at his funeral, this fellow walks in, a soldier, and he eulogized my nephew. We had no idea who he was. It turns out he was his staff sergeant. And he comes in and he's wearing this big kippah on his head. And we all thought he looked kind of like a wild and crazy Hilltop Youth type. What happened was he's totally secular. And he looked around for a kippah because he wanted to respect the event. And so someone gave him this kippah and he put this on. Anyway, he comes up and he starts the eulogy and he says, Amichai that's my nephew, was from Karnei Shomron. He was a religious boy from Karnei Shomron. I am a secular boy from Tel Aviv. And we were best friends. And they talked about how they would have ongoing conversations into the night about everything possible and disagreed on a tremendous amount, but were united in their love for the people, love for the country, united also in their interests. They love similar things, sports or music or whatever. And it is that model that is the model for all of us. And I think we are seeing this at the people level. The problem is at the political level and at some of the people who are most invested in political movements. So yesterday, there were two different memorial events for October 7th. And most people in the country could only scratch their heads and say, this is ridiculous. Now, I have to say, I saw part of one and part of the other, because in the middle, we had our own little local memorial event that I went to. But of the two things I saw, they were both very good. They both said very similar things. They both had representatives of families who had lost loved ones in the war, who had lost loved ones on October 7th. They were both very moving events. And you just have to scratch your head and say, why couldn't they do one event? It was so stupid. And I think that more and more people in the country are just tired of the politicians. And it doesn't matter if they're right or left or middle. Most people are saying we got to take the entire 120 members of the Knesset and throw them out and start all over. And people are also saying that, by the way, about the army, we have very mixed feelings, because on the one hand, this army had a colossal mess up on October 7th. Not just that they didn't have the intelligence, but they weren't prepared for, you should always be prepared for a surprise attack. They were so totally not prepared for a surprise attack. So there's no question that the leadership of the IDF really messed up. But on the other hand, and we saw this particularly in the last few weeks, the IDF has amazing capability. And so on the one hand, you want to say, get rid of all the leadership. On the other hand, you say, but on the other hand, look what they just did in Lebanon. And, so there's a kind of a balance there.
I want to say exactly what Sandra finished with. And I think this is the thing we need to remember, because we've been within horrible here with a situation that we could not imagine. Still, we have 101 hostages in Gaza. But I think that in Israel, in the last couple of weeks, I think there's a something change. Let's look at it this way. Right now in Gaza, basically, we control the whole area. I mean, we've built bases inside Gaza. We are in the same places where the communities of Gush Katif were, army, and Gaza is under our control. We basically finished the biggest numbers of commanders there and soldiers in Hamas. In Lebanon, it's insane. A place, in the beginning we said Hamas is hard, but Lebanon is 10 times harder. On a single act, with this brilliant out-of-the-world James Bond scene where hundreds and thousands of commanders need to press in the pager at the same time, and the explosive just, does what it does. Unbelievable. So we damaged all the commander's base. Then with 3 or 4 strikes from the air, the whole capacity of all the big commanders were done. And of course, the big snake, Nasrallah, to the extent that nobody would believe that in 1 week, from being under the scare that all of Israel is going to be bombarded and we would need to stay in shelters at night with no electricity for weeks. It's unbelievable. And we survived 2 major attacks from Iran with the most ballistic missiles ever thrown in our country or in any country. And I think this is something to finish with a question. We saw God's act in protecting our land in so many levels. The numbers, with all the pain of every soldier that died in Gaza or was wounded, you need to understand that the American army, in every research they had before the 7th of October, they gave us numbers of casualties we will have if we enter Gaza, and the numbers was in the thousands of soldiers that gonna die in the process. Not only, thank God, many casualties, many wounded, but it's not even close to the number people imagined. Even from the side of the Hamas, people are talking about somewhere between 40 to 80,000 Gaza people died in the process. Hamas declared this week that 80% of them were indeed Hamas. Even the Hamas declared that all the words, and still, we know the demonstrations and blaming for genocide, but I'm thinking that 2 things. Number one, we could never imagine what happened on the 7th of October in 2023, but we couldn't imagine what would happen on the 7th of October 2024. To the point that right now in Iran, they're hiding away, scared from the next attack Israel is going to inflict on them. That's the reality. If Gaza is done, Hezbollah now is in the process. They're talking about, yesterday, one of the commanders in Israel told all the cities in the north, be prepared to accept the people back to their home. I don't know, but that's what they're talking about. And now Iran is scared. I think it's an amazing thing. And I think the highest thing that happened during the year is that we saw the people of Israel not only going into unity, but also many of them connecting back with their roots, with their Judaism, with their belief systems. And many people said a simple sentence that I heard over and over again. They attacked us only because we were Jews. That's the only reason why they attacked us, and we will prove them how much we are Jews. And we heard of so many people that got connected to God more than ever. And I think what we showcased in this year was resilience, was a belief system, was the understanding that we are fighting for our nation, and heroes that went 3 and 4 times. I have friends since the 7th of October still drafted, 42 years old with 5 kids. It's unreal. And what we went through with our belief system and the belief of God, I think it's something changed in the atmosphere of the people of Israel forever. And I think that, at least in my perspective, it's something that it was a very painful lesson to be learned from the 7th of October. But I'm looking back at everything we went through this year, and I think we grew as a nation from it. And I think we came together, and I think we've learned a lot about what we're going through and what the future is going to hold for us. Sandra, what did you learn? What do you think our nation learned from this year?
Well, I agree with everything you say. I just want to conclude, I think, with experience that I had just these past couple days on the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, with the Jewish New Year. We were in synagogue Thursday and Friday. We have prayers typically. It's a longer than average prayer service. It's about 4.5 hours each day, the main prayer service. My brother, who was the one whose son was killed in January, he always leads one of the major prayers. And these are serious prayers. Part of the prayers people sing together, and it's very uplifting. Part of it, the person who leads the prayers sings or chants. And there's one prayer that is really a central prayer, both on the New Year and on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And it's a prayer that basically is saying, understanding that God is in charge and that he is the only one who knows who will live and who will die, who will suffer and who will enjoy, who will be wealthy and who will be poor. I mean, all these things as you look ahead to your fate. And he was leading this prayer, and he has an amazing voice, and he always prays from the most deep-seated feeling, and he really sweeps the entire congregation. This time, it was something else. And you could just feel him, and he carried all of us. When last year we said the same prayer, and God knew that Amichai would not live to finish the year. And you have to, there's something, all of us, we all took that into our hearts, and we started saying, like you started this saying, Shmuel, we all think everything is great, and we have confidence, and everything's under control. And suddenly we're sitting there with that same prayer, and it wasn't the same prayer that we prayed last year. We feel so much more vulnerable. But on the same point, and this is where I came out of it, on the one hand, more vulnerable and more serious and maybe more grown up about it. But by the same token, I felt like the very fact that I'm saying only God knows this, it kind of enabled me to release and to say, no, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't worry about what's going to happen because God is in charge. And I have to believe that God, even when things happen that pain us deeply, God knows best. And I think with all the uncertainties and the confusion of this past year, I think in a way, the only way to get through a year like this is to just surrender to God and say, he knows best. We don't have the answers. We don't understand. Somehow God has it. We have to leave it to God.
I've shared with everybody on the chat Leonard Cohen's version, "Who's by Fire." It's a play on this prayer that you just mentioned, and I say amen to everything you said. I want to finish up. We usually we don't talk about it specifically, but I need to finish that, and then Kim is going to finish with talking about the tour. But I would say this, that these days more than ever, the holidays, with everything we just talked about, you can understand the situation in Israel is not easy, and the economy is not easy. And I'm telling you that I've got more than ever requests to help people in need in the holidays. And I've shared it several times that I usually, as a person, Kim and Sandra remember that it's really hard for me to even consider asking people for help for food. And I can tell you that I always distance myself from the people who actually accept the money. It's hard for me to see the need by somebody who is in need. It's something personal I cannot explain. But this time somebody approached me personally. Somebody called me, found my number and called me and shared his story and asked, and he said, "We need your help." And of course, we helped them immediately, personally, and from CFOIC. But then as I enter these high holidays, and I'm thinking that everything we just said really, showcases the need. With so many people lost their jobs, with so many people that had to change places, then and people had to leave their job. Think about the implications of everything we just said. Think about what the injuries, think about the issues people are fighting, the personal stories. The need is greater than what we can help, and this is a call that everybody wants to do something, especially at this time, and he asked himself, how can I help Israel? I think this is the way to help these holidays. Let's make the beginning of the year to be a bit sweeter for those people in real need around Judea and Samaria. I'm getting asked all the time, and I think we can and we should do more to help those people in need. So thank you, Sandra, for today. May all the things we say today will be in the memory of the lost ones, and in speedy recovery for the wounded people, and with strong pray for the hostages to return back to their homes safe. Kim, tell us about how can people come to Israel?
Well, I want to say, just to follow up and clarify, if people want to make a difference in Israel, and they have been, and we're so appreciative, but there is still time to give. Like, even though the holidays, we're in the middle of them, if people want to give and help, purchase a food voucher for a family, yes, we still need help. We still are raising money for that, and you can definitely still give towards that. It's on the website, or you can call the office, and we could definitely take a donation, and we'll get that shipped to Israel right away. Then for those that want a more hands-on, Katie's on the call. She does not have a camera, but she's gonna probably come on and just say a couple of words. But we do have a tour planned for March. You'll have to give me the dates, Katie. But March of 2025. And this is not a regular, right now Israel's still a year later. This is not a fun go tour, go run where Jesus walked kind of tour. No, this is a hands-on, get your hands dirty. Let's do something really to make a difference. And one of the things we did a tour in November, I believe, of last year, so almost a year ago. And one of the things that came out of that tour that I found very, very interesting, I was talking to Danny, our tour guide, and Katie, and Danny was like, we don't want to. This isn't voyeurism. We don't want to capitalize on people's pain. We're not here to, I don't know, it doesn't want to, we don't want this to be icky. But they were visiting families of people that either had hostages that were in Gaza, people that had been injured, soldiers in the hospital, and they were so appreciative. Number one, that there were Christians that were coming to Israel still. And number two, that it was therapeutic for them to even have someone who cared enough to listen. So as they told their stories and as they shared their pain and as they, put this out, it kind of lifted their burden, and so it was just kind of a different concept and a different thing that we saw. So I definitely think there's going to be a lot of that going on. So Katie, you got a couple of words. Give us the dates, the price if you have it, and how they can contact you to get on the tour.
Hello, everyone. We are going to Israel with our tour on March 2nd through 10th, 2025. It will be $3,740 per person, not including airfare, but we will help you find good flights if we can. And I'm organizing it, but technically Danny, our wonderful tour guide, does all the work. And so he will handle all the details for us. And like Kim said, this is not going to be a really typical tour. We will stay in a nice hotel. We'll have good meals. We'll do some sightseeing. So there will be fun things as well. But like Kim said, what we did last year is we did visit wounded men in the hospital, and we met families who had been in the South on the day of October 7th. We visited some of the damaged kibbutzim down south. We helped on farms. We pulled weeds. We repotted plants. And so it was a really fun tour. I think it was very special for everyone who came. We only had 10 participants last year. We'll probably only take 10 to 20 this year. But being in Israel at that time, we got to connect with the land of Israel, with the people of Israel in such a special way. And we did have people thanking us constantly they were just so surprised that there were Christians who were willing to come to Israel in a war and help, not just tour. So it was very special for everyone. I would love for all of you to join me. We have about 7 participants so far. Your deadline to sign up is November 1st. And I'll put my email in the chat. You can send me an email. You can also check out our website. It's on the main page with all the information. And if you have any questions, definitely ask me, ask Kim.
I was say maybe put in the chat the link for registration as well, Katie.
Yes, I'll do that.
I think it's a banner ad at the top of the homepage of the website. So if you just click, if you don't see it when you come on, just click the arrow that moves the banners along. You'll find it and click right on that. And that's the easiest way to get all the information.
Definitely. So what a year, and only God knows what the next year holds, right? Is that our prayer for this new year, huh?
Well, let's hope it's a better year.
Amen. Amen. And resolution, and bring them home.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate everybody coming, and thanks for joining us, and we will see you again next month.